You have to get your own leads. So I was at Barnes and Nobles after work from, let's say, 6 to 9 p.m. till they're closed, finding leads, and then also people were literally saying, "Hey, you don't speak English. Why are you taking my order? Bring somebody else here that speaks English,"
Oh,
right?
that
And then
hurts.
you have to take that as a 16-year-old to take that hit and be able to say, you know, take a moment, process the emotions, and then let it go and move on to the next customer. And that's when I realized that it didn't exist.
And we are recording. All right, we're live. Gary Coichy, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Sure. Hey, Victor, thank you for having me.
And a happy new year as well too. Even though we're recording this in 2025, you are my first guest of 2026. So looking forward to kicking off this new year with you.
Likewise, very excited.
And what makes our talk today so interesting is that you run a podcast company. You're actually the founder of a podcast company. And I have very few opportunities to speak with people who work within that space specifically on a podcast. It's a little bit meta, let's say the least, but let's get into it. So you're the founder of Pod Digital Media. So talk to us
Yes,
about what Pod Digital Media is and what your role as founder entails.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, very excited to be here. I'm glad I'm your first guest, and we're certainly looking forward to a very successful and productive 2026. Yes. So my name is Gary Coichy. As stated, I'm the founder and CEO of Pod Digital Media. Pod Digital Media, we operate as the first and the largest multicultural podcast network in the country. We are a cultural hub for brand partners, Fortune 500 brands. When they are looking to reach diverse audiences within the podcast ecosystem, they lean on us. The reason being is that we work with well over 400 podcast shows in every single category you can think of: sports, news, relationships, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, healthcare, mental health, entrepreneurship, momopreneurship, parenting, you name it. We have a show in every single category. So when our brand partners are looking to reach those audiences at scale within the podcast ecosystem, they lean on us in order to make that happen.
Gary, looking forward to our chat. As always, we go back to the beginning. So let's start first with where you're from.
I'm from Haiti. I'm from Port-au-Prince, Haiti, born and raised. I moved to the States. I moved to the U.S. when I was 15, going on 16, where I moved to a place called Rockland County. It's outside of New York City. It's about 40 minutes outside of New York City. It's in the suburbs. So that's where I grew up, and that's where most of my family resided, which, of course, all of us migrated from Haiti, some early, much earlier than I have. And yeah, pretty much grew up there. And from there, went on, lived in Rockland County. From there, went on to college in Westchester County, which is the county right over, the bridge right over. And then after that, also went to school overseas where I studied in London and in Paris.
Gary, let's start first with your time in Haiti because you said you were 16 when you emigrated, right?
That's correct. That's
So
correct.
you remember your childhood then.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
So
Without
let's
a
go
doubt.
into a little bit about what life was like growing up in Haiti. And I got to tell you first, I love your accent because when we first started talking before we hit the record button, I really heard the New Yorker in it. But as you started to tell your story about growing up in Haiti, you could kind of hear the because was your first language, was it French or was it Haitian Creole?
It was Haitian Creole.
Yeah.
Haitian Creole is the first language. However, when you do go to school and basically that's when you actually start learning French. So, hey, Creole is first and French is second and English is third.
Growing up in Haiti, what was it like? And then what motivated your parents to move to the US when you were 16?
Absolutely. Yeah. Growing up in Haiti, as you can imagine, is a third world country, right? It's in the Afro Caribbean. It's one of the first countries that actually that received their independence back in 1804. Yeah. On our end, growing up in Haiti, it wasn't glamorous, right? So in Haiti, unfortunately, there's no middle class. You're either poor or, or your family are well off. Unfortunately, on our side, we were not well off, right? So there were certainly struggles earlier on. However, what I did notice earlier on is that both my parents were entrepreneurs. So immediately that certainly instilled that sense of resiliency by seeing both of them really work really hard, struggle really hard, launching their businesses. Some business failed, some worked out. And, that certainly early on at a much younger age, certainly realized that, hey, this is a path that um, I'll certainly like to take, just realizing that you can create your own opportunities and you eat what you kill, right? Because once
There's that famous
as an,
line in sales. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So as an entrepreneur, I watching my parents as entrepreneurs certainly give me that sense of sort of awareness and resiliency earlier on. But yeah, however, certainly went to school, had a, learned, played tennis, did karate, did all of it, had a certainly had a great upbringing as far as, family with siblings, so on and so forth. But, my parents definitely wanted a better life for myself and my siblings, which is when we actually migrated. My mom migrated first in 1991, and I came shortly after, well, 6 years after in 1997. So it was certainly an opportunity for a better life. How do we ensure that our future can be much brighter versus staying in Haiti, where we can actually come to the States to get a better education and to actually go ahead and sort of progress throughout.
Do you think your parents would have emigrated had they not been entrepreneurs? And I say that because the entrepreneurial mindset is you want authorship of your career, and then to a
Yep.
greater extent, authorship of your life as well too. And you're very quick to say, "This isn't for me, so we're going to be doing this instead of that." So, do you think the fact that they were entrepreneurs really helped put them in the right mindset to move to a new country? Because that is a big undertaking, packing up and moving the entire family, and especially
Yeah.
the way you listed it too. You guys came in, I guess, parts. You said your mom first, and then you came. What was it like a year or two later? You said
No, 6 years later, because my
six
mom
years.
came in.
6 years later. Okay.
Absolutely, because the process once you're from the islands, it's a thorough process in terms of ensuring that you have proper family here in the States, you have the proper, you have proper support. So therefore, so not relying on the government. So it was certainly a process to ensure that my mom first became a legal alien first, and then after that, she was able to file to send for myself and my other siblings.
Was that your first time when you landed and moved to New York permanently? Was that your first time in New York City?
First time in New York, first time, and I mean, I can remember this day vividly. It was January 20th, 1997, and, you get off the plane and, you're all warm and, you step out and then once I stepped out and my mom gave me all this coat, I'm like, why am I wearing this big jacket? I don't need this. It's warm in here. And man, once those doors open, and that was my first introduction to the cold. Yeah, and it was rigid. It was one of the coldest nights that winter. And but yeah, that was my very first time actually even getting on the airplane, January 20th, 1997.
Was there any sort of culture shock? Because you mentioned that you couldn't speak English yet, and then
But yeah,
you're basically in a city that is just packed tight and stacked high with millions and millions of people, like, completely different from Port-au-Prince.
100%. I mean, the culture shock was pretty massive in terms of not knowing how to speak the language, the styles, the clothes. There's times I can remember vividly and saying, and I was in school. And I said, man, I hope an angel can come tonight and hit me in my head so I can learn how to speak English tomorrow, because it was so frustrating. In terms of, you're trying to you want to communicate, you want to understand what other people are saying, you just actually don't quite get it. So, however, we still stayed resilient, stayed patient. Big shout outs to my ESL teachers, English as a second language, Mrs. Broadley, Mrs. Caffarelli, Mrs. Wells. I always give them a shout out simply because I remember the patience in terms of it took in order for me to day by day seeing the improvements, the progress as far as learning English as a whole. But I think also too, in addition to the language, it was a fresh start, right? Where I'm coming in. Yes, I have some family members that I know. However, as far as I'm having friends as a teenager, you can imagine trying to make new friends in a new country. And when there's also a language barrier, that
Mm.
wasn't easy. That wasn't easy also too. Luckily for us, we grew up in a street where there's actually multiple other Haitian families, and some of those kids were ahead of me, so they spoke both English and Creole. So that sort of really helped me. That certainly helped me a great deal with the transition. But for the most part, it was certainly frustrating for sure.
What about your mother, though? Did she double down on speaking English with you because she really wanted to get you to, get you to learn the language?
To be honest with you, man, till this day, my mother's accent is still pretty heavy. I think as those Haitian families, when they're coming to the States, their number one priority is how can we make a better life? So immediately is finding those jobs where they can actually immediately start working and sending money back home and
Mm.
sending for the other family members. So I think my mother really focused on, working, whether it's a factory job, whether it's a cleaning job, whatever it may have been. She focused on that versus prioritizing learning the language. Further down the line, she can certainly speak English. She understands it. However, she certainly didn't prioritize it. She wanted us to have the proper education so we can really so we can have a better future versus her trying to learn the language and trying to adapt to the American culture.
What did you do for fun? Like, what were your hobbies or interests growing up? And let's start with kind of like let's look at it twofold. Like, what were your interests or hobbies when you were in Haiti, and then when you moved to New York City, were you able to port some of those over, or did you jump into something completely new because you were in a new country with a new
No,
culture?
great
And
question. No, absolutely great question. As a kid, tennis was one of my favorite sports growing up. Even though soccer is actually the national sport, we're very excited for 2026. Haiti's actually in the World Cup for the first time, I want to say since 1975. So we're very excited about that. Very, very much looking forward to it. So I did play soccer. However, tennis was actually one of my favorite hobbies. I used to play tennis twice on Saturdays and Sundays. I was up at 6 a.m. well 5:30 a.m. playing tennis from I want to say from 6 a.m. up until 10 a.m. And I'll do the exact same thing on Sundays as well. So tennis was certainly one of my favorite hobbies. Did karate, of course, and of course just hanging with friends, right? I think once I came to the States, I really kept up with it. Kept up with tennis, played tennis, and found out unlike Haiti, those courts are actually on those courts are actually everywhere. Every single public court actually had a tennis court, so that made it even more exciting actually to play tennis. Again, it's very cold, so you're not playing tennis until springtime. However, certainly spend a lot of time playing more tennis and meeting new friends that actually enjoy tennis as well.
Isn't tennis a great metaphor for entrepreneurs? Because it's a sport you play by yourself, like you're not on a team, but you need someone else to participate with you to play it properly, kind of like in business. It's like you can start your business, but if you don't have customers, you're not gonna really go anywhere.
I agree. I mean, tennis earlier on taught me about mental toughness, right? Because you can certainly have a great set, where you're basically acing your opponent, 40 love, 40 love, 40 love, but
Mhm.
that person can actually come back, right? So therefore, you have to actually be ready and be resilient to stay in the game in order for you to win the entire match. Right. And also too, at times you might underestimate your opponent. You might think, hey, I'm fully ready. Let me jump into it. And then you actually go and then you get your butt kicked. Right. So it's a perfect metaphor for entrepreneurship and certainly mental toughness because it's actually you versus yourself really battling sort of those the mindset, the different negative thoughts. Hey, I'm going to lose. Oh no, but if you stay in the game and you stay the course, you'll certainly see success.
So who's your favorite player?
Favorite player is Andre Agassi.
Geez, we're
So
going way back, yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I was playing tennis back then when he was dominating,
Oh,
right?
when he
Andre
had the hair
Agassi.
and then the hair was
Yep,
gone and then
exactly.
he
Right,
dropped out into
exactly.
the
Yeah,
minors. I
we
remember
also
that,
have
yeah.
Pete Sampras,
Oh, geez,
right?
yeah, there's
So
another throwback too, yeah.
yeah, so I grew up on all of those guys, so certainly enjoyed watching them and seeing how the game has evolved since too. So yeah, I'm certainly a big tennis fan. I've been to the Wimbledon, I've been to the U.S. Open, I've been to the Miami Open. I haven't been to the French Open yet, and of course the Australian Open, but they're certainly on the list for sure.
Okay, so your favorite, type of court to play on, is it, grass, tarmac, or is it, God, what did the French play on? Not gravel,
Earth?
yes,
No, it's gravel. It's gravel. No,
yeah.
but for me, it's certainly the regular courts, just the regular courts. But I have played on all the different courts, especially in France when I travel. But certainly the regular green courts.
I ask all of my guests who their influences are, and this is episode 136. You're the first person to lead with a fictional character. I'm positive. Throw out here a must-watch advertising movie going back to 1992 with, uh, oh god, Eddie Murphy, slipped my mind completely.
Yeah,
Tell us why Marcus Graham from Boomerang is, uh, is one of your
man.
influences.
Oh man. The reason being is, I tell this story all the time. Is you can't be what you can't see. And for me,
Mm.
growing up, I did not have any older sibling, and older siblings tend to guide you and help and assist you in terms of, hey, you should go to college, you should study this, you should study that, right? So, unfortunately, I did not have that. So I never truly had a role model, someone I can see, I can look at and say, hey, I would like to be that person. Yes, I had neighbors, I had other kids' parents that were actually very successful, that did very well for themselves, but I never really saw myself in them. And Boomerang with Eddie Murphy as Marcus Graham was the first movie that I watched, and I said, I would like to be like this guy. I think he's cool. He's smart. He's handsome.
He's
He's
very
well dressed.
smooth,
He's
very
very
smooth.
smooth,
Yes.
right? He's very smooth. He's well educated, right? So I said I would like to be this guy. I like the fact that he walks in the room, he commands respect, and then when he speaks, his coworkers actually look for him, look to hear him speak, and look for his thoughts and ideas. And yeah, so that was the first movie that I've ever watched that really influenced me. And I said I would like to go to college. I would like to do what this guy does. And come to find out, it turned to be marketing. So I went to school for international business and marketing. Also, you worked for an international brand. right? The brand was based out of France. However, you worked in the States. So I wanted to be, I've always wanted to be an international CEO, someone that does it at the global level. And I went on to college to study international business and marketing. I ended up working in beauty. I worked in fashion for a French company, Lacoste, as a director of marketing. I did that, and where I was actually having different casting calls, and I did the exact same things that he did. Hey, hold all my calls in the movie. So I really emulated my life after him, and it's certainly it's that movie certainly has had a great influence in my overall career.
All right, so we've got a couple other to touch on. Your parents.
Yes, yes. My parents, absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, again, it certainly goes without saying. Again, those were the first two people that earlier on, from as long as I can remember from being 4, 5, 6 years old, and really seeing them hustle, right, and hustle in terms of launching different businesses. My mom had a business, had a dry cleaning business. However, what she would do every year before for back to school, everyone would be coming over for appointments, because she was actually the person that did the school uniforms for various schools for various kids throughout the neighborhood. So she had a lot of clients on that front. My dad actually owned a couple storefronts, small front stores where you can actually come get your snacks, your sodas, so on and so forth, right? So I've seen him run through multiple storefronts. Some of them did very well. Some of them did not do as well. I also watched my dad open a couple of restaurants. So my both my parents absolutely had a major influence in my overall entrepreneurial journey and just my overall mindset in terms of, you get punched, if you get punched in the face, you don't fall down or give up. You stay in the pocket and you run the play. Right. So I've seen my parents do that over and over again. Certainly I've had real life influences in my overall perspective in life.
And how about your other professional peers and mentors? Because you've got a lot of people that you source inspiration from.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's certainly a lot of folks in media that I certainly look up to, and other folks that have actually launched launched businesses. You have Richard Lou Dennis, he's the CEO of Essence Ventures. He's very successful. He sold one of his companies for, I want to say, well over $300 million. He did extremely well. However, he continues to to still be a viable force in media. You have a gentleman by the name of Louis Carr. He's a professional. He's actually just became president of BT Networks, which has recently been acquired by CBS, Paramount CBS. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of folks that, of course, also other mentors that I met along the way, a gentleman by the name of Christopher Clemens, that certainly became a real life mentor. I have a former boss of mine named Dean Gardner. I can go on and on. It's, as an entrepreneur, we like to take a lot of credit by saying, hey, I did it. But there's always a lot of people along the way that certainly pushed us, for us to continue, for us to really see the success, for us to see the things that we can't see within ourselves in order to reach that next level.
Okay, so let's talk about your first job ever. What did you learn about yourself working at McDonald's?
First job ever, man. Well, was working as a cashier at McDonald's, and till this day, it certainly, I cherish those memories. I cherish what he taught me then, and I still cherish, what it's. And fast forward now, years later, McDonald's is actually one of the largest
Mm.
um, clients that we have here at Pod Digital Media. But no, he was, at time it was very frustrating. Again, this is also, I moved to the States in January of 1997. I started working at McDonald's in June of 1997. So you can imagine that the language barrier and the language gap is still there. So, imagine going to McDonald's, you ordering a cheeseburger, but the person gives you a quarter pounder of cheese. So imagine the
Ooh.
frustration as a customer. Imagine the frustration as a customer, right? And if you already walked out of the store, you drove up and you're like, man, I have the wrong order and you have to come back. So I certainly have a few of those stories where I certainly got the order wrong, or I'd say, and I'll keep saying, "Hey, did you want a cheeseburger?" And they're like, "No, quarter pounder of cheese," because they couldn't understand me. But also, what I didn't know then and what I know now is that it actually helped. It put me on a fast track to learn English even faster,
I was just about
simply
to
because
ask that too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It certainly helped me learn English much faster, simply because the interaction with the customers, you're also dealing with different personalities. Some people are nice and some people are not so nice, right? So,
Mhm.
and also taught me about emotional intelligence. How do you react to
Yes,
when
that's for sure.
so it taught me so much then that I did not realize I was being cultivated. I was being molded in a certain way where I can now, the way I respond to, whether it's certain obstacles or certain challenges, it takes me back to those days of being at McDonald's and messing. When I'm messing, it taught me about accountability. saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I messed up your order," and being honest with my manager, saying, "Hey, I did not do this the right way. I did not take the order the right way," and also taught me to sort of really quickly pivot. Yesterday's loss is yesterday's loss. It is a whole new day. This is how you should go about it. So it's all of those things that like I was learning. So the job at McDonald's was so much more than just, hey, serving people burgers and showing up to work for a paycheck, but it was really teaching me about life.
Would you say it also made you a much more resilient person? Because you have to
Absolutely.
have a very thick skin to work in fast food.
Without a doubt, without a doubt, without a doubt, right? And then also people are literally saying, "Hey, you don't speak English. Why are you taking my order? Bring somebody else here that speaks English,"
Oh,
right?
that
And
hurts.
then you have to take that as a 16-year-old to take that hit and be able to say, you know, take a moment, process the emotions, and then let it go and move on to the next customer. So, and then now that throughout my career where I've ended up in sales roles, I've been able to apply those learnings from earlier on to those different jobs.
Was there a certain point when you were working at McDonald's where you realized your English was really coming around? Like a moment where you're like, "Wait a minute, I'm not confusing cheeseburger with quarter pounder with cheese anymore.
With
I don't have people saying, 'Get me the guy who can speak English to take my
right.
order.'" Was there a moment where you're like, "Oh, this is really working out for me?"
Without a doubt, without a doubt. What he also taught me, I could see the progress, and I can also gauge yeah. I use that as a barometer for my confidence level, right? Because once I actually started to really understand the menu, figure out the menu, also understand what different people were looking for, different things that they wanted, and I was able to articulate it back to them. And so that's certainly the confidence level, the comfort level grew, and that made me a much better person, without a doubt.
I just realized you probably worked the drive-through as well, right?
I did, I did, I
Oh
did. I
god, so
messed up.
but trying to understand what people are telling you in what is a foreign language over that really poor headset, that must have been
Yeah.
frustrating as heck.
But to be honest with you, the day they handed me that headset, I could see it right now was probably one of the coolest days of my life. Because I'm like, what is this? I get to have the headset. I'm talking to someone that's not in front of me. It was again, think about the technology back then, and
That's very true, yeah.
1997, and you're coming from a third world country where you've never seen a McDonald's before, and then now you're seeing it, and now you're working in this well-known restaurant, and you're the guy running the drive-through, right? So yeah, it was certainly certainly a cool moment for sure. But again, it was certainly again frustrating because I can't hear them, yet I have to articulate it, put the order in, and then they come up say, "No, that's not what I ordered." And then imagine like when it's lunchtime, and then you have cars going around the block. So it was certainly frustrating, but again, survived it and certainly learned a lot from it.
Okay, so what brought you to Berkeley College University, and why did you study international business?
So the international business piece really started by the fact that I wanted to. Watching Boomerang, I said, "Hey, I would like to work in some shape or form for a company that's at an international capacity, right? So how do I study? How can I do business overseas? Also, again, coming from the islands, how can I also go back to the islands and give back to my country and still work, to work in those environments? So yeah, so Berkeley at the time was it allowed me to stay home. It was myself and my mother that lived together at the time. And it allowed me to stay home to commute so I can still so I can still see my mom on a regular basis, on a daily basis. So Berkeley was close enough. It was it was a 25-minute commute to campus back and forth, but they also had a really good, solid international business program. And that business program is actually what also gave me an opportunity to study in London and also in Paris, to study overseas. So moved to the States in 97, first time out ever leaving the country, and then moved now, trying to get acclimated to an entire new culture. And then now 2 years later, now I end up in a whole different world in London, trying to get it, trying to adapt to the English culture. So, again, all those became great learning experiences. Till this day, I'm able to speak to those experiences at 19 years old, where I can say, "Hey, I studied in London, and this is what I learned from it."
And was Paris was part of that too, right?
Paris was a part of that, but Paris was much easier again because I speak French fluently.
Gotcha.
So, yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
let's put this. Okay, so let's compare France, London, and New York. All three of them side by side by side. So we know that your professional life in New York started after you graduated from university, but it sort of kicked off in London and Paris. So putting those three locations side by side, what were the key differences, and what did you have to adapt to in order to, you know, I guess get with whatever business culture was like in say London and Paris again versus with hindsight into New York as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think in London I would say London was more as a student. Again, imagine I was a student and trying to understand how to do business, the entire culture, but also London and New York to me were almost the same because they were both melting pots, right? Because in London I was me London is certainly a much smaller New York in my opinion, because I was meeting folks from India, I was meeting folks from Sweden, from Denmark, from Italy, from Brazil, all these other places, which is almost the same thing as New York as well. So therefore, those were almost similar, but at the time, the pounds were killing the dollar. So therefore,
Yes.
as a broke college student, that was not fun at all whatsoever. So therefore, that was certainly a bit, again, and we're also talking. Those were the checks from my McDonald's days that I had saved while I'm in college, right? So yeah, so that was certainly a bit, that was certainly not fun from that perspective. But no, I think overall, London and New York to me at the time were a bit similar, and I was well received in London because also everyone in London also loved people from the States. France was a completely different story back in 2000, back in
Yeah.
2001, right? It was like,
Yeah.
hey, and all my classmates were in fact American, so therefore they didn't speak any French, but they would try, and the French were like, no, no, speak to us in English. We can't do not mess up a language. And I was almost like the translator that was really working, helping my former my classmates as to how they should communicate to the French culture. So I'll certainly say New York, and I'll rank it. I'll say New York and London to me from a business perspective were great experiences. At the time, French was not, but later in life, I've gone back to France. I've also worked for a lot of French companies like Cost, L'Occitane, Pierre Fabre. So where I've actually realized that they have their certain ways and of doing business that I didn't understand then, but I understand now.
Okay, speaking about different ways of doing business, Big Mac in France versus a Big Mac in London versus a Big Mac in New York City. Could you tell the difference?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
100%. 100%.
Which one's your
100%
preference?
can. Yeah. My preference would be the US. It's tastier, even though the Big Mac in London and France is actually healthier.
Oh, okay. Wasn't
Yeah,
expecting
because
that answer.
they use different ingredients from what I understand, but it doesn't taste as well. It doesn't taste as good as the one in the States. So I'll choose the one in the States anytime. I mean, I'm a big McDonald's fan too. So my favorite meal is a crispy chicken, a spicy crispy chicken. No, regular crispy chicken with hot picante sauce, which turns into spicy, and with French fries and a icy orange. And then on the breakfast side is an egg McMuffin with two hash browns, grape jelly, and a small black coffee.
You have nailed that order. For me
Yeah,
for me, I'd say I'm a McNugget guy, lunch and dinner,
I
hotcakes for
love McNuggets
breakfast.
as well. That's my
Yeah.
second. That's my second favorite. Yep.
Yeah, that you can exercise portion control a little bit better with
Which
them.
sauce though? Which sauce? It's very
Oh, the,
important.
sweet and sour.
Okay. I'm a barbecue guy. I'm a
Okay,
I'm a McNuggets with barbecue guy. Yeah,
nice. Okay, so after graduation, you got a job selling infomercials. You've gotta
I
tell me,
did.
how did you find this job? And when you say selling infomercials, are we talking about those, like, 30-minute, like, practically, like, infomercial programs that are on at 2 in the morning?
That's it. That's exactly it. That's
Okay,
exactly it.
how did that come
I
about,
was
and what
I was
infomercials were you responsible for? I wanna hear that because I watched them all.
Yeah, no, man. So it was I was desperate for a job. I was desperate trying to get a job, and I knew I had great sales skills because I'd worked at the Shopper Image throughout college, and I've done a lot of retail jobs where I was actually working the men's department at Lord and Taylor, where I was selling throughout college, where I was, selling clothes. So I knew I had great sales skills. And I also know I'm a people person, very well with people, can read people quickly, and yeah, so I wanted to get into sales, but I really wanted to get into marketing. However, I realized that um, sales and marketing goes hand in hand. And then the way the job was pitched to me was, you work for a marketing company that does infomercials, but you have to sell the infomercials yourself, right? So you're not working with there's no one bringing you have to get your own leads. So I was at Barnes and Nobles after work from, let's say, 6 to 9 p.m. till they're closed, finding leads, finding innovative products, that was sort of future forward, that you couldn't find in a regular store, right? Trying to find those products that will also do very well in infomercials. So,
Oh,
but
so
yeah,
you were sorry, you weren't selling the infomercials to the media companies, you were actually finding the products and trying to convert them into using infomercials. I got it completely backwards. Oh, no, keep
Yeah,
going. This
no, so
makes it even more
he wasn't selling it to
interesting.
the media company, no, he was actually calling the manufacturers themselves and saying, "Look, your product needs visibility, and this is how we can get you on national television, and this is how we will do it." And I would call them, and we had an entire script. It was like 4 pages. And it's like, the person's like, "How much is it gonna cost?" By the second line, like, "How much is it gonna cost?" We're like, "No, no, no." And you have to explain to them all of the benefits as to why it should be an infomercial. And I did it, and I remember the first one of the infomercials that I did was a basketball shoe that allowed you to jump higher so you can dunk. That was one
Okay.
of the products that was one of the products that I brought
Nice.
in. I also did some jewelry company. I did a lot of jewelry companies. But yeah, it was a hard sell, man. It was a hard sell. But again, that is making well over 65, 75 to 100 calls a day because you're getting a lot of no's. You're getting
Mhm.
a lot of no's. And the more no's you get, the more no's you get, the closer you get to a yes.
And depending on how you take those no's, I'm in sales as well too. I've been in sales for the last 17 years. And usually when people approach me and say, "Hey, I want to get into sales," I'm like resilience. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
going to hear more no's than yes unless you work at
Yep.
Google or Meta. And if that's going to beat you down, like don't do this
Yeah.
job. Like no
Without a
hard
doubt.
feelings. Yeah.
Without a
No,
doubt, and you can't take it personal, and you just have to get up and get back in the saddle and keep it moving and keep going forward.
completely agree. And then
Yeah.
after infomercials, you moved to 24/7 real media.
Yes.
And what were you
24
doing in this role?
24/7 media was an account management role. Also, now I have no selling. So there was no selling in terms of bringing clients through the door. It was more so account management, managing media campaigns, search media campaigns for Fortune 500 brands. So it was a media agency which further later got acquired by WPP Media. However, it was certainly it was a great role. That's when I learned about digital marketing, search marketing specifically, search marketing, and then from there I learned about display advertising, etc. But yeah, it was the first role where as an account manager, I was advising clients on how the campaigns were performing or not performing and coming up with various optimizing solutions alongside my campaign manager as to how we're going to improve their accounts, their search campaigns, so that they can actually generate revenue or generate leads, whatever their objective might have been. So, but yeah, it was certainly a really great role that introduced me to the media world, and I haven't looked back since.
It's interesting because a lot of the lead generation you say there must have come in handy, not just lead generation, but SEO and search engine management must have come in handy for podcasting. Because there was a joke someone had made on Reddit once under the podcasting subreddit. And I don't know if
Mhm.
it's really a joke, but I agree with them. It said that there is no such thing as a podcaster. You're a social media manager with a podcast.
I agree. I agree. That is a fact. Simply because once you create the content, you have to let people know about the content because if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it,
Oh,
nobody cares.
exactly. Because noise
Yeah,
needs an audience.
precisely.
Oh,
Exactly.
I'm glad you used
Exactly.
that. I use that in that metaphor as well too. Okay, so you
Yep.
24/7 is acquired by WPP. Your next role, you moved to MediaCom. Was that an internal transition?
No, so after 24/7, I went on the brand side. So I went on the
Okay.
brand side after the agency, my first stint on the agency side, it was also very fast paced, right? Again, you're managing 3 to 4 accounts, different clients have different needs, again, different personalities. But now this is at the corporate level. This is not at the McDonald's level where you're dealing with, every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's coming through the door. Those are not professionals that understand, that CEOs and CMOs that understand their business, and they're looking for expertise from our agency in order for them to grow their business. So was certainly a very challenging role, learned a great deal. From there, I moved on. I went on the brand side, and on the brand side, I worked as an e-commerce marketing manager, where now I was managing media agencies that were managing on media campaigns on our behalf. So I went on the brand side, worked on the brand side for a few years, and that's when I came back to MediaCom. I came back on the agency side because I realized there was a great deal I wasn't learning, and there's no better place to learn a lot and at a faster rate, more than on the agency side. So that's when I came back to I worked at MediaCom, which is now also at the which is also a WPP company.
Were you drinking from a fire hose when you went to MediaCom?
Absolutely, absolutely, without a doubt, without a doubt, without
A
a doubt.
and you spent a lot of time working search and social there. You were one of the directors.
Yes, correct. I worked as an associate director I worked in the Dell business, I worked in the Canon business, I worked in a few businesses, but yeah, worked primarily on search and social, really learning really learning the search and then the social landscape, right? So for social, I was managing LinkedIn campaigns, Snapchat campaigns, what's the other, Twitter at the time campaigns, Meta campaigns, and then also being innovative to find additional platforms where our clients can actually have the business, so they can get additional eyeballs and additional traffic.
So talk
But yeah,
talk
that's
to
my
me about
role.
that part actually, because that's really interesting. New platforms, because you're a social media manager, you're a leader, and all of a sudden a new platform comes out of nowhere. Client sends you an email and says, "Gary, we want to be on it," and you're like, "This thing's 5 minutes old. I don't have the 15 years experience on this platform because it's not even 15 years old."
Yeah.
So when a new platform presents itself, what do you do to get up to speed to make sure that you can take care of your clients responsibly on that platform?
Yes. No, absolutely. It's certainly the education piece, but before the education piece is the curiosity piece, because the goal is, once you're on the agency side as a leader, your goal is to find out those platforms before your clients do, so you can educate and bring it forward before they actually read about it in any media publications, right? So that being said, I think one of the reasons, I ended up, as an entrepreneur now, is a curiosity aspect as to what's next. And then also, once you work at certain agencies, one of the things that work in your favor is that new platforms are coming to you first to give you beta opportunities, so you can actually test those platforms before they actually go to market, right? So therefore, we'll know about the YouTube before YouTube is YouTube. Like, we'll get those opportunities so we can actually properly evaluate it and make an informed decision, and then bring it forth to our clients. However, but you must have that curiosity to understand, hey, what is next? What's happening at Meta, what's happening at what's happening at Google, what's happening at Twitter, to sort of understanding it may not even be a new platform, but it can be a new product that they're offering that may be beneficial to your client. But you must have that always be on the lookout for innovation to keep looking for what's new and what's next.
And sometimes you have to get out of your own shoes and take a step back and say, okay, this might not be a platform I'm going to use for personal use, but I can see exactly an entire market that would be all over this. Because sometimes people will reference back their own consumption habits and think, because I'm not on X, I'm just throwing this out here, Pinterest or whatever, I'm not going to put my clients on it, even though it might
Right.
be right
Exactly.
for the clients.
Yeah, exactly. So you certainly have to get out of your own head, to your point, and understand what is the true value that this new platform brings, right? And then how can we, it may not be beneficial for me on the personal side, but how can one of my clients use it, and how can we leverage it in order for them to sort of in order for them to get new eyeballs. So that's something that stayed with me then. That's something that's still with me now, in terms of, hey, how can we leverage this new tool? How can we leverage this new platform to ensure that there can be some visibility, and ensure that we can even just having that knowledge so you can speak to it intelligently, even that's very helpful too.
And you made the jump from one holding co to another. So Resolution Media under the OMG banner, if I've got it right.
Yes.
How did your role change and your responsibilities and your day-to-day change when you moved over there?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, the agency side is, the work is the work on the agency side. Again, I moved from one media company to another media agency to another media agency. So from a role perspective, as far as leadership, leading an entire team, that did not change much. It's just, again, just different personalities, but I think it's more so different clients, right? You're dealing with different clients that has different objectives, that have different goals, and what may have worked on a B2B client is not going to work for a client for a B2C client, right? So therefore, how do you sort of now to sort of rewire your brain, so then now you can actually even learn Snapchat may not have been good for Dell Enterprises, but Snapchat is a good platform for Ray-Ban or for Sunglass Hut, right? So then how do you sort of making sure that now you have to learn about the different platforms and in different campaigns in order for you to reach success for your clients. Because on the agency side, on the media agency side, you're servicing your clients. That's You have to make them happy, and you have to make their campaign successful. So that much didn't change on that front, but it did change as far as which platforms I had to learn and how to apply different knowledges in order for me to, to sort of deliver success for my clients.
And your next role, you moved over to an agency. I love the name of this, laundry service.
Laundry service,
So
yes.
so tell us how things changed when you moved to laundry service, and, what did your role there entail?
Yes. So my laundry service. So the laundry service was a very interesting role, and this is why. Interesting in regards to the fact that I worked at a media agencies, from from 24/7 Mediacom to Omnicom. Those were all media roles. Laundry service was actually a creative shop, right? Where they actually where they actually it was a creative shop where they actually created campaigns, produced the assets that media companies use to push it to the different platforms. So therefore, laundry service hours. So then now is completely different. I had to apply a completely different creative mindset as far as the type of offering, as to the type of services we're offering to our clients. So then that sort of really closed the entire gap for me from doing the media campaigns, launching media campaigns, and then now to actually now taking a step back behind the curtain to creating those media campaigns. So yeah, so it was a very interesting role. It was a great role. Worked on a lot of cool campaigns. Did a lot of activations. We worked on I worked on one particularly was BMW. We launched a couple of new cars for BMW. Created a lot of new campaigns, different partnerships with different influencers, etc. So yeah, it was a great role for sure.
What point while you're working at laundry service does the idea for Pod Digital Media come about? So we're gonna bring things full circle right here. Like, what
Yes.
was
Yeah.
that moment where you said, "Okay, I see an opportunity in the market, and I believe I'm someone who can really exploit that opportunity." And I say exploit in a positive way, in a business way.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So a client of ours, Kel's daughter, which I believe has since been acquired by L'Oreal, or at the time was acquired by L'Oreal, came to us as an agency. We pitched them, and we won the business. I led the pitch as the leading business development biz dev person on the pitch. We won the business. The the issues were since they've been acquired by larger entities such as L'Oreal, the core consumers felt like the product has been diluted, right? They said, hey, since you guys have gotten acquired, you guys have gotten bigger, the quality of the product has gone down. And it was the 25th year anniversary in 2017, and they felt the need to completely rebrand. And which is why they came to us as a creative agency to help them through that entire process. So, and we did a really good job creating various campaigns on their behalf. We worked with the founder and CEO named Lisa Price, very smart, very very well spoken, and we worked closely with her. She was very happy. Now, the mindset that I have from a media working on a media agency is how do we get more budgets from our clients? If the budget is 1 million, how do we get the budget to 2 million? Right? So this is when the innovative piece comes into play to say, look, we need to find new platforms. We need to find new ways to help my clients get new customers. So let me let's discover a new platform, and then so we can increase the budget. That is the mindset that I have coming from a media agency. Now that I'm at a creative shop, I've employed the same mindset in saying, okay, this is a really good client. This is a really great brand for a business. How can we increase the budget? Now, knowing that the founder and CEO, Lisa Price, is well spoken. Her story is she has a great story that everyone loves. I said, we can increase the budget from Carol's daughter L'Oreal if we can get Lisa Price on podcasts so she can really tell that story. So podcast is emerging as a new medium. If we can identify the right podcast that has a desired audience, she can really tell that story and people can actually hear it in her own voice versus just watching a video that sort of really dates back to when she started to where she's at now, so on and so forth. If we can identify 3 to 5 podcasts where she can be interviewed, that'll be a great way to sort of to help with the rebranding process. So that's really, in all honesty, what really kicked off that process when I started calling around, when I called all of the large podcast networks to say, hey, look, we're looking for potential earned media opportunities or even running ads in your podcast. And, I can name every single one of them, and no one really had the podcast that really spoke to Afro Latinas, African American women, Hispanic women that was really that were culturally relevant and contextually relevant in order for her to in order for her to tell a story. And after I called the last one, I said, man, look, this is, all of the podcasts that were recommending didn't make any sense. So I said, oh man, those guys really don't quite get it. And that's when I realized that it didn't exist. There were no such thing as a multicultural podcast network where if a brand wanted to reach African Americans, Hispanics, and diverse audiences within the podcast space, where they can actually go to place their ads. And that's when really the idea sparked December of 2017.
Okay, and so at this point, are you going around and trying to find certain people that might fit into your network, or are you building it from the ground up at that point? Like in-house podcasts where you're trying to find the talent and say, we're gonna start this, it's gonna be episodic, and it's gonna just keep going.
It was twofold. It was twofold. It was like, how do I, how do I find new talent? Um, you know, how do I find new talent, and how do I go, how do I get, people that already have those podcasts, already have those audiences, and how can I discover new voices, fresh voices that would be good to create podcast content in order to for brand partners to actually to for the ad placements.
You must have been spending a lot of time listening and listening and listening.
It was really a lot more time, also a lot more time just, just also scrolling a lot through Apple. At the time, Apple was the number one and the main platform for, the main platform for podcast consumption, right? So it was really going through it and figure out, how do I actually go which podcast, and quickly identifying if this is a good podcast or if it's not a good podcast for that to happen.
Gotcha. So you didn't find yourself listening to multiple episodes because sometimes someone could put out 10 episodes and some of them will be great and other ones will be like, "Ooh, they said something that might contradict my own personal values. Maybe I'm not going to approach them." Because like I said, there's a lot of content out there and
Yeah,
even the individual creators put out a lot of content themselves. So it's kind of hard to wrap your head around exactly what their values are fully. Like you can get a good
yeah.
idea of it, but then there might be something off here or there.
No, I mean, it's your point, yes. So you're certainly spending time, but also really understanding what the content, what the talent and the content creator was at the time, right? And then what is the topic of their, what is the topic of their podcast, and also are they an authoritative voice, someone that actually has the authority or can really speak from, from the specific subject that they were talking, or there's a subject matter expert and the topic in which they're talking about. Is it financial? If it's financial literacy, if it's music, if it's sports, is this person credible enough in order for that to happen? So it was certainly quickly realizing that and seeing who's good. If it makes sense, or if it did not make sense, then actually go ahead and reach out to the person and say, hey, if they were looking for representation.
And let's talk about the name. Where did the name Pod Digital Media come from?
Oh yeah, it was pod is short for podcast. So I said, hey, let's so people can immediately understand this is about podcasting. And then digital media was more knowing audio, digital audio was, so it was like it was supposed to be pod media digital. And then I said, no, PMD, PDM sounds better than PMD. So therefore, we called it, I ended up calling it pod digital media.
Is it also better for SEO?
It is better for SEO,
There we
absolutely.
go. You can tell sometimes the SEO people, they're very firm. They're like, "Nope, we tested this. This is what it's gonna be. We don't care what the creative people think whatsoever." And,
Exactly.
so let's look back at day 1 of the company to where you guys are at now. So how much has changed?
So much has changed. So much has changed as far as, I mean, when you're thinking of, I started the company as a glorified one man show, as one person, as one person that's running the business, right? That's, one person that's doing the sales, doing the account management, seeding your talent, right? So do also going to trade, not trade shows, but going to conferences, right? To find new, to find new clients. So it was a lot. And it was like that for about a year and a half, for the first year and a half. And then that's when I realized that, hey, we were growing, brands were actually gravitating towards it, and podcasting as a whole started to actually get more traction. And then we basically, started hired a couple of contractors, then turned the contractors into full-time employees, then hired a CFO, then we actually had a then that's when the business really grew. But the business was growing due to the fact that the appetite was there for the business, right? The appetite was there for the diverse audiences in podcasting, and then more diverse voices also started to enter the podcast space. So which give us more credibility when we're going to these bigger meetings, bigger pitches, to actually, in fact, win businesses, and get more RFPs. But certainly, as it's night and day in comparison to where we were in 2018 to where we're at right now.
What about you as a founder and a leader? You mentioned that you were a one-man show when the company first started. And I imagine you're not doing a lot of the jobs you did on day 1. You've got other people doing that. Was it difficult for you to relinquish those responsibilities? I kind of say to people,
Absolutely,
"Yeah, okay, good." So
absolutely,
it was hard for you to
absolutely.
move. It was hard for you to stop being a player and be a coach, which is really difficult for some people, especially if you get a
Yeah,
real thrill from all the action of closing deals and being on the front and making those calls.
yeah, absolutely. And also, you also have to understand, no one cares the way you care about your business. So therefore, when
Mm.
certain things come up, when the person is doing the role, is doing the job, that executing on the job that you've done, and you did with such passion and such excitement and enthusiasm, you're not seeing that. You immediately put the player's hat on, and then try to do it yourself. right? When in fact, it's not the person that doesn't have the same enthusiasm. It's just that they have to learn how to do it. And then sort of to really sort of be on that coach mode. But at the same time, I hate this analogy, but I say it, it's, you're flying the plane as you're building it, and you sort
Yes,
of
I've
need
heard that
everyone,
before.
you sort of need everyone to be on board. Sorry, you need everyone to be on board and understand what the vision looks like. And then so therefore you're trying to rush through things and you get back into being in the weeds in order to get it done faster. And then that just ends up hurting you in the long run. And I certainly did that for sure without a doubt once we really started to get contractors and employees in the door.
Gary, if anyone wants to learn more about Pod Digital Media, what's the best way they can do that?
Absolutely. You can certainly go on our website, www.poddigitalmedia.com. You can also go on our Instagram, which is at Podmedia, and where it's also the same name, also on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, I've put all of those links in the video. And if you're listening, jump on them. That's what you should be doing, multitasking while you're listening to the podcast. Go to the sites. And
Absolutely.
okay, Gary, let's bring everything home. You ready for rapid fire questions?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, the campaign you're most proud of.
McDonald's. We launched. We signed a multi-year, multi-million dollar deal with McDonald's in 2022, and McDonald's was the first client that really leveraged us for a 360 product slate, where we can do audio campaigns, digital audio campaigns, where we did influencer marketing, and we also did live events and live activations, which is a live podcast. So certainly, or the campaign we did with McDonald's, a Change Leaders program that we did top of 2023, was certainly one of the best campaigns that the company has executed to date.
I'm going to digress a little bit. I got a question. I was going to ask this earlier, but I'll ask it now that you brought up McDonald's again. Given that you were an employee there, that was your first job ever. When you went
Yeah.
in to pitch McDonald's, did slide number 1 or 2 have a photo of you in your uniform saying, "Let's bring this full circle"?
So prior to the pitch for McDonald's, I called every single person I used to work with if they had a picture of me in a McDonald's uniform.
Oh,
Unfortunately, no one was able to find me a picture for me and the McDonald's employees. However, this is what I did say. Um, when it was the call was a lot of McDonald's executives, agency executives, myself, and a couple of people from my team, and you know, I kicked off. I introduced myself. I said, "Hey, before we get started, I would like to say, as a young kid coming from the island of Haiti, barely speaking any English, McDonald's was the first company to give me an opportunity to actually for employment. I am not sure how this call is going to go, and I'm not sure if this is the first or the last time we'll ever have this conversation. However, I am just proud and excited just to be here because my my life has come full circle because McDonald's could potentially be the first company to give the company that I've started a multi-year, multi-million dollar opportunity.
way to bring it
And
full circle. That was beautiful.
that's yeah, yeah, and that's immediately what I said after the pitch, and then immediately, and it really warmed everyone up. It really warmed everyone up because they felt the passion, they felt the excitement, and they know the role that they have played in my life then and the role that they were about to play in my life now. So yeah, so that was certainly, but I certainly spoke to it. I certainly had that. I certainly made sure I communicated that to the entire executive team when I pitched them.
All right, your favorite movie?
Bronx Tale.
Which surprises me because I thought it would have been Boomerang. When I was doing my
No,
research.
Boomerang is actually number 3.
Oh,
Boomerang is number 3.
okay, so what's number
Yeah.
2? You've got a podium. Like
Number
you
3 is
were
a movie it's called Love Jones.
okay.
It's called yeah, Bronx Tale is number 1, Boomerang is number 2. Oh, no, no, Love Jones is number 2, Boomerang is number 3. Um, Show Me the Money, Jerry Maguire is number 4, and Inception is number 5.
No, that's quite an eclectic mix. If Hollywood were to make a movie based on your life story, who would you want to play you?
Anthony Mackie, for sure, will certainly is certainly up there, Anthony Mackie, and, I would say not Luke Wilson, but he played in Remember the Titans. I can't remember his name right now, but Anthony Mackie will certainly be number 1 for sure.
Okay, this is
And then
Captain
also
America himself.
Don Cheadle as well too. Don Cheadle, he's one of my favorite actors.
Don Cheadle's fantastic. Did you watch House of
Yeah.
Lies?
Absolutely
Oh
watch House of
god.
Lies.
I think I like his stuff, but I think that's his most underrated body of work.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. I agree.
Okay, so if my follow-up to that question, if Hollywood were to make that movie based on your life story, what would you call it?
The Life and Times of Gary Quashie.
Your favorite book?
The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver is one of my favorite book.
Your favorite song?
Sade. Is It a Crime?
If you could go back in time and give your younger self advice, what would you say?
Never stop being curious. Keep going.
The best advice you have ever received.
The way you do anything is the way you do everything. So do it. Just do it right.
My signature closing question, if you weren't in media and marketing, what would you be doing and why?
If I was in media marketing, I'd be a professional tennis player, like my man Arthur Ashe or Pete Sampras or Andre Agassi, for sure. Tennis, without a doubt. I would love to be a professional tennis player, traveling the world, still get that international sort of itch, scratch that international bug itch for sure. And yeah, playing overseas and playing within the States. Absolutely. I would love to be a tennis player.
And we're going to end things right here. Gary, thanks so much for stopping by today.
Absolutely, Victor. Thank you for having me.